we'll take it.
Good evening. Welcome to the Community Awareness Committee's January panel discussion. Our topic this evening is code enforcement. I am Trish Steiner, Chair of the Community Awareness Committee. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, the Community Awareness Committee is a committee of the Neighborhood Safety Commission. The Neighborhood Safety Commission is comprised of 15 individuals appointed by the chairman and the district commissioners. We welcome you and thank you for attending this evening, and welcome those of you who are watching on Cobb TV. Our committee members are Joel Cope and Pearl Roberts. Please turn your cell phones off or on silence, as your phone will interfere with the broadcasting of this discussion. We will take written questions from the audience. If you will please just write your question down and raise your hand, I will be glad to get it to Joel. Thank you. Our moderator this evening is Joel Cope. Joel is an attorney whose practice is in trial litigation, and he has been a practicing attorney for 18 years. He currently serves on the Neighborhood Safety Commission and served as its chair for one term. He served as the president of the Mableton Improvement Coalition he serves as the president of the Mableton Improvement Coalition and president of the Mableton Community Fund. He has also served as secretary and president of his HOA and was appointed by the past county commissioner chairman to serve as a member of the Transit Advisory Board, eventually obtaining the position of this board's vice chair. We especially want to thank Joel for being our dynamic moderator this evening, and Joel will now introduce our distinguished panel members to you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Again, I am Joel Cope. For those who had seen the article in the paper or got an online publication, obviously I'm not Kim McCoy. Sorry she won't be with us this evening as moderator, but maybe next time. But I'm certainly thankful we have our distinguished panelists this evening, as well as our members of the audience. We have a lot of interest in this topic, as you can see, and we also managed to have an article in the paper in advance of today talking about this panel, which we're delighted to have. As Trish has pointed out, code enforcement is our topic. This is a very important topic, as you can tell. For the members of the audience, we have folks who can watch us online as well as on TV 23. This will be broadcast later on as well, and we have a live audience. If you have questions, certainly invite members of the audience to contribute those already. We can certainly add your questions to the list. And I want to go ahead and introduce our panelists to you this evening, and then I'll have each one of them talk a little bit about themselves and sort of why they're here and the expertise they bring. We're very fortunate. They all have some very important jobs they perform, and they're dedicated public servants, and we're lucky to have them with us this evening. And I'll introduce them to you in no particular order. Judge Philip Taylor with the Magistrate Court of Cobb County, Kathy Pickett with Code Enforcement Officer with Cobb County, Jerry Lanham, Code Enforcement Manager with Cobb County, Dana Johnson, Director of the Community Development Agency, and Sergeant Lennox Clark, who's with the Quality of Life Unit of Cobb County. Just so the audience members know, the way this works is that I will be asking questions of the panelists, and we do not deliberately pick a topic or a question that only one person can comment on. We ask all the panelists to feel free to comment as much or as little as he or she wishes. We're very lucky to have them. They bring a lot of expertise and a lot of talent to this field, which, as you know, has a lot of impact on the members of the community here in Cobb County. And so without further ado, what I'd like to do is go ahead and start with Judge Taylor, and he'll introduce himself to the audience and kind of give his background and why he's here, and then we'll kind of work our way across the dais here until we have all five panelists introduced.
All right, well, good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm Philip Taylor. I'm a judge of the Cobb County Magistrate Court. Also serve the city of Kennesaw and Ackworth, but we're here on the county ordinance issues. I typically preside over the county ordinance court that we have every Thursday. Just a brief background, I've been with the magistrate court since 1996. I've practiced law for about 27 years, full-time with the court now, and got my law degree from Emory and got a PhD from the University of Nevada, and that's really, briefly, that's what I do.
Okay, all right, well, thank you so very much. I appreciate that. Ms. Pickett?
I'm Kathy Pickett. I'm with the Code Enforcement Division. Our division is responsible for enforcement of various chapters of the county ordinances. I've been in community development for 18 years. 14 of those years I've spent in code enforcement. That's pretty much my background and basically what we do.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Lanham?
I'm Jerry Lanham, Code Enforcement Manager for Cobb County. I've been with Cobb County 13 and a half years. 4 years of that I've been the code manager. I think it's a great opportunity tonight for us to get together, and I think one of the most important things about code enforcement is educating the public. The public really doesn't understand what we do, and I think this is a great opportunity for us to get to know each other, to know what code enforcement is, and hopefully walk away with a positive impact. And tonight, being a manager of code enforcement, there's a good and bad to everything, and sometimes results occur based on our hard effort and citizens' efforts. My past history was a manager with a steel company for 21 years prior to coming here, but I've basically been in management my entire working life. So pleasure to be here tonight with y'all.
Thank you so much. Mr. Johnson?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Dana Johnson. I am the Director of Community Development for Cobb County. Community Development is the development coordinating agency for the county. We have 5 different divisions, from the planning division, your big picture people, zoning, which are kind of your regulators on the zoning ordinance, code enforcement, which are our sheriffs that kind of ensure compliance with our codes that we have, our development inspections division, which handles all of your permitting issues and development related issues, and of course business license, which are our tax collectors for our occupational tax licenses. So that's kind of all of what community development does, and code enforcement is a really integral part of our mission as an agency, because code enforcement helps to make sure that the laws that are put into place are being followed in a manner that helps our communities stay vibrant and to ensure quality for all people who live in Cobb County.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Sergeant Clark?
Good evening. My name is Lennox Clark. Thank you for having me. I am the current supervisor of the Quality of Life Unit attached to Cobb County Police Department. Our primary goal or our primary mission is to assist code enforcement when needed. We also attack blight, and what that is when we have areas of kind of urban dilapidation, we go out, make sure we're taking care of dilapidated houses, individuals if they're inside there, because we believe that if there are houses in disrepair, people will come and tend to hang out in those houses that you don't want in your neighborhoods. And we go in because that's not code enforcement's job. That's kind of a PD job, and then we support patrol in doing that. We also, in that we handle the problems that code enforcement can't. Those situations that come up where people unfortunately have to be arrested, or we have to run criminal checks or something like that, and that's things code enforcement can't do.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much to each one of you. And just to kind of dovetail on what Mr. Lanham said and Sergeant Clark said, obviously this is going to be a positive conversation about code enforcement. We want to show how this is a very good thing for the county that we have this ability. And of course, as Sergeant Clark has pointed out, there is a public safety component to code enforcement. A lot of people might be thinking to themselves, well, what in the world has code enforcement got to do with public safety, which is what this whole committee is about. But I think that's going to become very apparent here in very short order when we kind of connect those dots for everyone. But without further ado, I want to go and begin with the questions that we've had of us. And again, to our audience members, if you have a question that you have submitted, feel free to add others. And if you haven't submitted any questions, feel free to add some to that list as well. If you could, please tell me, what is the code in code enforcement referring to? Is this a state code, a federal code? What exactly is that?
The codes that we have adopted are adopted by the Board of Commissioners. They're basically local codes. There are some codes that do come out of state law that the police would enforce, but that's more related to parking issues, and you have to look at state law in that case. But basically, our ordinances that we enforce in code enforcement are local ordinances adopted by the Board of Commissioners that are enforceable only in unincorporated Cobb County, not within city limits, because cities have their own code enforcement, and sometimes their ordinances don't match or comply with what we have on the books. So basically, our ordinance are local ordinances adopted by the Board of Commissioners.
So just to be clear, so these are codes that are unique to Cobb. These don't have any force in Cherokee, Fulton, DeKalb. It's specific to Cobb.
That's true. These ordinances apply only to unincorporated Cobb County. Yes, sir.
Okay, wonderful.
Other jurisdictions may have similar codes,
Right.
but that would just be by happenstance of them having similar issues or challenges that they're dealing with in their community.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you. Excellent point.
And if I could just add for a moment, some of the cities have contracted with the county. For example, animal control, some of the cities use the county's animal control. So you may live in the city, but find yourself getting a ticket from a county officer, and that's because of the contracts between the cities and the county. So there's overlap, but each city and the county has their own separate set of codes, but there is some cooperation between the two and who's going to enforce those at times.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. What is the purpose of the code? What is it designed to accomplish?
The purpose of our codes are to protect the health, safety, and general welfare of the residents of Cobb County. So depending on, that's the overarching what the whole purpose of a code is to do. It has to be rooted in some type of legal mechanism to assist the community. So that's kind of the basis that we, I'm not a lawyer, but if I were a lawyer, I would want to make sure that your codes are being structured in a manner that are meeting those general goals, which is the purpose of government.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. And what are the broad areas or subject areas that it concerns within the code?
Parts of, we enforce various parts of the ordinances. The largest part is the zoning ordinance, and those are related to specific zoning classifications that are assigned to each property in an incorporated Cobb County. Those ordinances are primarily related to permitted or allowable uses on property. So if you tried to run a type of business off of a property that's not zoned appropriately, you might see a code enforcement officer come by. Or if you're not using a property, a residential property properly, you may see us. We're primarily complaint driven, but we do proactively work at times. We also enforce parts of the solid waste ordinance, which are related to litter control, for people that are stockpiling trash on property. Also, hours of collection for that trash truck that comes by your residence at 5 o'clock in the morning, or just even something as simple as time limit for containers where someone may have their trash cans out at the curb too long. We also enforce the sign code, which regulates the signage that's allowed in an incorporated Cobb County on residential commercial properties and just off-premise type advertising for billboards and such. I think that's pretty much have it covered there.
Okay, and so just to clarify, what is the connection between code enforcement and zoning itself? Zoning classification like Z something or SLUP this, what is the connection there, those two things?
Well, for things that are not allowed or permitted on properties, there are boards that are set up to apply for variances or special land use permit applications can be filed for zoning consideration to try to do something that's not allowed in the ordinance but outside of the ordinance, and then a board would have to approve that type of use, approve it or deny it.
Okay. And by board, you mean the Board of Commissioners?
No, there are a Board of Zoning Appeals and a Planning Commission, and then ultimately the Board of Commissioners will hear some of those.
Okay, all right. And where would the average citizen of Cobb go if he or she wanted to look and see where the codes are found?
They can go to actually the county clerk's website off of www.cobbcounty.org, or you can just go directly to Municode, www.municode.com, and then search for Georgia, search for Cobb County, and all of those ordinances are listed on the websites.
And how do you spell Municode?
MUNICODE.
And what about people who are kind of prefer the old paper method? Where would he or she go if they wanted to find the code there?
The county clerk's office to get the official code.
Okay, all right. Obviously, the purpose of putting it on the computer was just to make it easier for folks to access the codes.
Right. And then the majority of people do. They'll call in and say, where can I find this in the code? And we'll direct them how to locate it.
Okay, all right. And how old is the Cobb County Code? How long has it been around as a base of code ordinances or regulations for the county? Is this a 50-year-old, 100-year-old?
The majority of the codes came into place in December 26 of 1972. The codes amended from time to time. There was a large bulk of them I'm sorry.
The zoning code was
Zoning
in
code, yes,
1972.
I'm sorry. The zoning code was in 1972. However, they are amended from time to time. There was another large bulk in 1990, and then twice a year the codes are looked at for amendments.
Okay.
But the actual code, and I'll defer to the judge on this, but I think they're around since Cobb County was created as a governmental unit.
Correct. I think when Cobb was created, there was a set of code ordinances that were adopted at the time, and of course, they've increased and they've been amended over the years. But I think when the county first came into existence, there were laws, whether they called it the county code at the time, but there are local laws that apply to these quality of life issues. So probably since the time Cobb County was founded.
Right, okay. So that's been a little while ago. All right. And so how does a new code proposal or amendment get started? How does it get started? Sort of talk us through that process. Where does it begin? How does it get created? How does it come before the deciders?
There are two ways where codes can get brought forward for consideration under the Cobb County manner of doing codes. The first way is for staff clarification. So if a part of the code is confusing, or we're in a court case and something isn't working the way that we thought it worked, that would be a staff clarification that we can do and bring forward to the board for consideration. If the state legislature changes state law on something that impacts some operation of Cobb County government, that would be another reason why the staff would bring forward a change for the Board of Commissioners to consider. If the board is bringing something forward that they would like to have considered, then you would need two sponsors for that legislation from the Board of Commissioners. So if a citizen member wanted to see Cobb County do a particular action, they would need to contact their commissioners and get two commissioners on board to direct staff through our annual code amendment process to bring forward a particular alteration or change or addition to the code.
And so who actually comes up with the wording for any particular change of a code?
Well, once staff has received direction on that, it'll depend on what type of code is being recommended. Obviously, if it's something that would impact public safety, police department operations, then the public safety officials would work with the county attorney to structure the particular code change to meet with that. If it's kind of something that's in the realm where we're talking about tonight, dealing with a property maintenance code or some kind of property code, then that would probably be developed through community development in consultation with our county attorney's office.
Okay. So the county attorney's office is part of that conversation as well?
Oh, absolutely. The county attorney's office is integral to make sure that our code structures are meeting all of the legal standards, and that we're not that we're bringing something forward that is complete and meets the legal standards of the county.
And can their average citizen come to your office and say, I really want to change the code on this particular thing, and make a suggestion?
They could make a suggestion to me, and then I usually I jot down the suggestions that we get, and I go to the commissioners once a year and say, is anyone interested in sponsoring one of these particular codes? And if I get two commissioners that say yes to one, then we start the research on it to start putting together a code structure for it.
Okay. And you mentioned, I think, that once or twice a year, these are actually put before the commissioners for consideration. When is that done?
That is first, the larger of the two is usually done starting at the next Board of Commissioners meeting, which is on January the 23rd. I don't have my phone in front of me. Actually, I do have my phone in front of me. Make sure I get these dates right here. Hold on one second. The first hearing in front of the Board of Commissioners will be on January the 26th at 7:00 p.m. There'll be a public hearing where any person in the community, business, resident, whatever, would be able to come up and speak on any particular code that they wish to comment on. All of the codes that are currently up for consideration are available online on the Community Development website. It's just easier to Google Cobb County Community Development instead of trying to give you a very long list of a URL to get there. So if you want to see the current codes that are being considered, just Google Cobb County Community Development. It'll take you right there. There's a link to it on our website. So our first hearing would be on January the 26th, which is the last Tuesday of January at 7 p.m. Then on February the 9th, The Planning Commission, the recommendations from the Planning Commission will be brought forward to the Board of Commissioners, which would be attached to a public hearing. And finally, on February the 23rd, will be the final public hearing on this round of code amendments. The Planning Commission has an interesting part in this as well, because anything that's in Chapter 110 or Chapter 134, which is our, 134 is our zoning ordinance, and 110 is our, your weed stuff. I can't remember what the name of the code is for 110. But under those subdivision code, thank you. Our subdivision code and our zoning code, our planning commission provides a recommendation on all of those codes before they're voted on by the planning commission. So their meeting, public meeting with additional public hearing input, will be on February the 2nd at 9 o'clock in the morning in this room.
Well, now, notwithstanding the meetings that you spoke about where people can come and talk before the commissioners, is there actually a comment period, like from January 1 to February 17th, where people can email you constantly about their thoughts about particular code proposals?
What I tell everybody is that all of these codes are in draft form until the time that 3 commissioners say yes to it.
Okay.
So if you have a comment on any of these codes, contact staff, contact the commissioners, and let us know your opinion.
Okay. And that was my next question. I guess you answered. It takes only 3 of the 5 to approve a code change, correct? It doesn't require a supermajority or unanimity. Okay. All right. And so technically, community development is really oversees the code enforcement process in Cobb County specifically, correct? Okay. All right.
Yes, sir.
All right. And is there a specific process by which if people want to make a proposal to you and say, I really want to change this particular part of the code, do they have to actually fill out a certain form, go to the website and fill out a specific set of fields to submit that to you? How rigid a process is that?
Are you speaking about?
Like if a citizen wants to come and make a code change to something, say, hey, I want to change the number of renters, or
they could just email me.
Okay.
Or call us and let us know.
Okay.
It's not a very rigid process.
Okay. Well, that's very good. That's good. And so, what office of the county has the process whereby they continually update the code? Is that still in your department in conjunction with the county attorney's office to make sure the code is getting updated? I mean, as it's been enacted and it's been proposed, and then the commissioners have approved it for that particular calendar year?
That would be the county clerk. So once the codes are approved, the county clerk then updates the codes and works with our online vendor, Municode, to make sure that all of the material is being put into the online portal so that people can access them. But even before that gets done, once a code is approved by Cobb County or changed by Cobb County, then we in community development will post something on our website so people will be able to see the most up-to-date revisions that have occurred while we're waiting for the process for Municode to update their data.
Okay. And how many code enforcement officers are employed in Cobb County?
We have 9 officers that are active in the field. We have Kathy Pickett, who's coordinator. You have myself as the manager, and then I have one admin that works in the office with me. So we have basically 9 people to cover the 334 square miles within Cobb County.
It sounds like they're on the road a lot.
They're on the road a lot, and they stay busy.
And so how does this compare to the number of officers doing similar work in some of the cities inside Cobb?
I don't want to go into comparing what other municipalities may do. We've been compared and found to have greater number than some, and in many cases less number. But it's bottom line what you take the resources you've got and what you do with them. And I think we're looked at highly from other folks that do code enforcement with the amount of work that we get done with the number of people that we have. We're very organized, we're very computerized in what we do. Our violation notices come on computers, and Ms. Pickett, she's working on a process right now to even get our citations computerized. So we're trying to be efficient with the taxpayer's dollar We're trying to do a good job at what we do, and we're trying to make every move count for us and laying out our route, starting our day out to go out and give the best service we can to the public.
Are the officers assigned to specific parts of the county, or do they have the entire county as their jurisdiction?
That's a double-edged question. My belief is if you're a code officer, you go anywhere in the county as assigned. But we do have them broken up into routes to try to keep the work concise. We have 2 people that we basically float with. We go where the majority of work is to try to keep from getting behind. This is kind of like where you see you get a rash of complaints, you can react to it quickly. And 90% of our complaints, if we go on the initial visit, they get closed. It's that 10% where we have to go back and sometimes go back again to get compliance and sometimes issue citations to get to where we need to go.
Okay. Do code enforcement officials just get in a county van and drive around the county and start spotting code enforcement violations, or do they primarily rely upon complaints coming to their attention?
We primarily, during the summer, due to the volume of calls and complaints submitted online, we're a reactive force. We react based on the complaints that we receive. Sometimes we're running 7 pages of complaints, 140 complaints behind in an area. That means that they've been filed and we haven't had time to get to them yet. That's why we are trying to figure a way to work and add more people into those areas. In the wintertime, it slows down. All the grass complaints go away. People quit complaining as much in the winter because they're not out in their backyard looking at their neighbor's yard when they're barbecuing, and there's more indoor time, and it just diminishes. So during the wintertime, we become more of a proactive code enforcement division, which is good because you can work on a larger section of a community issue versus a spot issue in a community.
And so if people want to make complaints, what's the most efficient and effective way for them to do that?
The most efficient way to do that is going to the Cobb County website and going to the code enforcement area, and you can enter the complaint online. That is the most efficient way. You can put your name in it as the complainant if you want to, but most people leave it blank. They want to report it anonymously, and we do, and I repeat, we do accept anonymous complaints in Cobb County. And if that's your neighbor and you may feel that you don't want to get involved, that is probably the smarter way to enter the complaint. If you email us and file the complaint, we'll be glad to enter it for you. But you need to understand that once we receive that email, if somebody came in and did an open records and requested any emails received on this address or about me, legally we would have to provide it to them. So your identity could be known at that point. Or you can simply just dial 770-528-2180. We have a call center, and you can leave a message with the address of the complaint and what the complaint is, or you can speak to staff and have the complaint entered that way, and you still don't have to give your name if you want to stay anonymous.
And besides the name, which may or may not be filled, what are the fields that people have to fill out on the online webpage if they want to make a complaint?
Well, basically what you're going to do is just follow the prompts. It'll show you required information. You definitely need to tell us what's wrong at the property or what you feel is the complaint. You'll need to fill out, of course, the address of the property. That's key. And you can basically, if you have the address, usually you can field everything else by just pressing the correct tab.
And I think you touched on this earlier, but people can obviously make anonymous complaints, and some people might say, well, they say that, but they're going to find out who did this. You know, who reported my neighbor to the county. Do you make any effort to try to find out who really did make the complaint?
From our standpoint, we don't really care who made the complaint. The complaint to us doesn't exist until we go out and physically verify that the complaint is there. If it doesn't violate the ordinance of Cobb County, it's not a complaint. And we close sometimes complaints because they're not in violation of our ordinances. We don't really care who put them in. If you choose to put your name on it, of course, that's always an option, but it's not a requirement. But nobody can research if you put it in online. There's no way to track back legally and find out who put it in or what email address it may have came from.
Okay. And you mentioned earlier the phone number for the office. If folks don't have a computer, that's probably the next best way to make a complaint.
If you didn't have a computer, sir, absolutely. The best way to enter a complaint would be to simply call the number. You could leave a message or speak with somebody and get the job handled just as well.
Okay, great. Now, if someone is in fact found to have run afoul of the code, is that a civil matter or a criminal matter?
I'm gonna let the
It is a criminal matter. The maximum penalty under the county code could be up to 6 months of probation plus a fine up to $1,000 plus surcharges, and perhaps serve up to 60 days in jail.
Okay.
So it is a criminal violation.
Okay, all right. And that, I would assume that those penalties you just outlined would probably be, someone would have to have done something pretty egregious to get the maximum of all those types of penalties, correct?
Oh, absolutely. And the way the court's structured is there's a kind of a pre-approved fine structure, which is kind of there's a gradation there depending on the number of violations and repeat violations. But to receive the potential maximum penalty, it has to be fairly egregious. The goal ultimately is to gain compliance and resolve the ticket. But those are the potential maximums
Okay.
people need to be aware of. So we always encourage folks to talk to lawyers, especially if they're looking at a repeat situation. They could find themselves in jail.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm sure people did not know that, so that's probably good information you put out there.
Mr. Cope,
Yes, certainly.
if I may, I'd like to add something. When we go out in code enforcement, when we find a violation, it's an alleged violation, we feel like it's violating the ordinance, we write a notice of violation. That carries a time period of time you have to correct the violation. If you don't correct it, we then have citation authority to issue a citation saying, okay, we gave you a notice, we followed what was prescribed by law, we gave you the time frame you needed, you didn't do it, you didn't contact us, so we give you a citation. When we issue you a citation, that does not mean you're guilty. That means we feel like you violated the ordinance. We gave you a citation for doing it. And when you go to court, that's why we have Judge Taylor and other judges that can hear the case and review it and make sure that they did violate the law. So we're not the judge and jury. We're just an enforcement division that has citation authority to issue citations to court where a person or a citizen can go into court and defend his position if he thinks we're incorrect. I wanted to make that clear in this scenario.
Well, great. Well, you actually were getting ahead of us. That's good. That's good. See, you're thinking down the road. So in that sense, the citations coming from your department are much like perhaps if an officer pulled someone over and gave him a ticket for running a red light, or it's just a ticket at that point. It's actually up to a judge to decide if that
Yes,
person is in fact guilty of that infraction or not.
Exactly.
Okay.
Joel, I'm going to add something to that too, because I think a lot of people get confused about what code enforcement's actions can be. So a lot of people get frustrated with code enforcement because of the due process aspect of it, because the community just wants to see that property get cleaned up. That's what our goal is. That's what the complainant wants to see. And sometimes it's frustrating that they think that the county can just go in and clean up the property. We obviously don't have the authority to go in and clean up other people's private property, which is why we use the court system through the citations, the issuance of the citations, and the hearing in front of a judge to kind of try to gain that compliance, because we are unable to, physically remediate the problem using taxpayer money. So I just want to be very clear. That's why we have the due process that we have to try to obtain compliance as part of this process.
And obviously, the court system is your last resort. You've by that point, you've tried repeatedly to work with that individual or business to bring them into compliance.
Right.
That's not your first resort. So.
Right.
And if I could add in, just to add something to what was said, the county does have the authority to do what's called nuisance abatements, and those come to our magistrate court too. And those are situations where there's abandoned property or property that's out of control and nobody's around to take care of it. We see it a lot with foreclosed homes. You see it a lot with people who have abandoned property and it's now in disrepair, the roof is falling in, or there's unfenced pools. The county does have the authority to do what's called a nuisance abatement, where they would come in and get permission from a judge after a hearing to go in and actually remedy that situation, board up the house, cut the grass, drain the pool. So there are those measures the county can take in a dangerous situation. For the homeowner or the property owner, that means that they're going to wind up paying the cost. There's a tax that's put against that property or a lien that's put against that property. So the county would eventually get reimbursed when that property is sold or redeveloped. But there is that authority to abate the nuisances where the county can come in and restructure your property, sometimes even demolish the property.
Well, that was an excellent point you bring up. Say you have whether it's a homeowner who has grass that's like 4 feet tall, windows falling out, doors falling off, or you have a business which maybe is attracting a drug element, a criminal element at night, some windows are broken out. Can the county say, we're going to chase all the bad stuff away, and then we're just going to come in there and just flatten the property?
It's generally, the answer is yes, but they do go through a lot of steps to be able to fix that situation or abate that nuisance. If it's a home that's occupied, that's in somewhat disrepair and the grass is high, the county's not going to come in, and the judge is certainly not going to issue an order to raise the property. A lot of these places, they're just abandoned, they're foreclosed, nobody wants to take the property back. We've seen it where there's been people have passed away, but there's no heirs to take the property. So in those extreme situations where it's uninhabitable, where it's a danger, where people are, criminal elements are congregating, where there's open pools, yes, the county can come in and remedy that situation. But that's an extreme measure, but it is available.
Okay, and again, that takes a lot of steps to get to that point.
Correct. Before it gets to me, a lot goes through notices and publications and postings before it even comes to me, yes.
Okay.
And to be clear, there has to be a safety concern that is attached to it when we use the nuisance abatement process, because using government intervention at that particular level has to have a clear safety aspect to it to make sure that we're doing it. Now, for instance, if we have a house which we think is abandoned and may have people living in it illegally, we'll work with our quality of life unit to kind of go in and, obviously before we start doing anything on it, we want to make sure no one's in the building still. The first thing is secure the building, and then start our process of putting together our documentation that's necessary to work with the court system to get the order that we need to pursue that. But again, most of our criteria that we use when we're analyzing a case for nuisance abatement is really geared towards the health and safety of the public, to make sure that the public is being protected by an unsafe structure that might be in the area.
So I can't just say, looking out the window, this ruins my view of my neighborhood, so can we please tear this house down?
Yeah, we don't tear houses down for ugly.
All right. Now, I'm going to guess that sometimes when you have officials showing up, issuing citations or giving them a notice that they need to remedy some problem, I'm guessing some business and homeowners don't receive that information very cheerfully, or they're not glad to see someone coming to their door with a pad and a pen issuing that. So what happens in those situations? Do you have another resource, such as a quality of life officer or something like that can help with that process?
We do. Sometimes, we do receive threats and things like that, and if we have a threatening or intimidating situation, we can contact the quality of life unit and have an officer assist us. For the most part, people are cooperative, though. A lot of folks just don't know the codes, they don't understand them, and they're willing to comply, but we do have some occasionally that will push back. And we do have, believe it or not, folks that will avoid us, so they'll not come to the door sometimes for us.
Okay.
We have a process for that where sometimes we can get the quality of life unit to try to help us serve a citation if we can't get someone to come to the door. We also have a private process server, which is a citizen that's contracted through Cobb County that we can give the citations to go and serve them for us if someone's avoiding us.
Okay. But the quality of life involvement, is that a small portion of your overall body of complaints you have?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
They, we do have, probably 2 or 3 a month, though, that will kind of be challenging to to work with. And then we do on vacant structures where we have, say, the complaint is that the windows and doors are broken out, and we have a valid reason to believe that someone may be occupying the structure. Anytime that we walk into a situation like that, we will always take quality of life. Sometimes we have to deal with homeless camps, and we'll take quality of life into the homeless camps with us.
Okay. Now, that's an interesting segue for quality of life, because obviously Mr. Johnson's wearing a suit and Sergeant Clark is wearing a police uniform. So how do you fit into the picture in terms of the work that you do in code enforcement?
What we'll do is we will supplement code enforcement proper. As Kathy was saying, that if there are situations where they can't, where they're having someone who's either hard to deal with or have made threatening comments, then we'll come and we'll sit back and we'll act as not just an enforcement element, but more of a protection element for them. They'll still serve their citations, and what we found is when people see the presence of 2 or 3 officers, they tend to calm down. Also, if we have someone who's hard to serve, what we'll do is sometimes we'll sit back and we'll wait for them to leave. We'll issue a citation via a traffic stop. They don't have the ability to conduct traffic stops. As we talked about, abandoned houses where people may be living in them, we'll go in, we'll essentially secure the house to make sure no dangerous people are inside, or if they're inside, we'll run them, make sure, or what we'll do is we'll check them for warrants. Oftentimes we'll find people who are wanted, they kind of want to get away from normal society so they don't get caught. And we'll find them in the abandoned houses. And we really don't want an unarmed civilian going into a situation and they could be potentially hurt.
But just to be clear, you're a Cobb County police officer who's working with code enforcement. You're not part of the code enforcement department.
Exactly, yes, sir. We're a separate unit, but we do work in conjunction with code enforcement when required.
Okay, wonderful. And you're one of the not. I guess how many quality of life officers are there in the whole county?
3.
Okay, so I'm looking at 1/3 right now.
Yeah, that's it. Yes.
Well, you have a lot of residents to talk to, I guess, if we base on the Cobb County population.
Yeah, our boys tend to get the job done. So.
Okay. Now, in the code enforcement realm, is there a gradation of severity that is looked upon? In other words, like we look at tall grass is more severe than too many tires in front of your store, or big piles of lumber are more serious to us than people who are having junk on their front yard. I mean,
I don't think from a perspective of what we do, we try to grade what's more severe and what's not. If you got a neighbor that's got 4 old tires thrown out in his front yard and another neighbor that's got 100 tires thrown out in his front yard, definitely the eye catcher would be the one with 100 tires. But they're both violating the ordinances of Cobb County. So we don't judge it as a severe. Now, I know Dana said, we don't do anything with ugly, but I've seen property that said, man, that's ugly. and but we don't really have a code to do anything with it. So it can get you from that standpoint an opinion, but the bottom line is it a violation of the code or is it not a violation of the code?
Right.
And if I could, I would like to back up a little bit on what Lennox stated a while ago. Very supportive of quality life. We have a great relationship, code enforcement and quality of life. And as a matter of fact, with all the police precincts, I think they've been wonderful to support us and back us up because all of our officers are unarmed. And I was shocked at how some citizens want to talk and treat code officers who are out there just trying to do their job. And that's when sometimes we have to call on the police. But the quality of life unit, if we want to educate the public and understand what code enforcement is about, whether it's us doing it, whether it's the police doing it, whether it's us doing this jointly, is to improve your quality of life. That name, quality of life, for that unit has a reason, and that's to make the citizens have a better quality of life in the neighborhoods that they live in Cobb County.
Well, that's a great segue, because I know we've been talking about kind of punitive measures and punishments, and you made a comment, Mr. Lyon, at the beginning about this being a positive aspect to the county. Because we don't want people to come away from this discussion thinking that it's just all about the county coming down on people or coming down on business. That's not what it's about. The goal of this is actually to improve the quality of life. But can you kind of give members of the audience some idea of how exactly do these citations improve their individual quality of life, whether they're homeowners or business owners?
Well, a citation doesn't improve your quality of life. A citation, if they're found guilty of it, improves the thought process of that person that we dealt with. Hopefully. Not always, but usually that happens. And then when he goes back to reside in your community, he has a different aspect or understanding of what's allowed in Cobb County, and you won't have an issue with him as a neighbor. I have seen areas that we've worked where there would be 15 or 20 beautiful houses and 3 or 4 that were very unkept, cluttered outside, and we would go and straighten them out. Then you ride through the subdivision, a month later, it looks lovely. It's not an eyesore or something that stands out. And that's what your quality of life is about, to maintain your property values, to not make you feel disgusted about where you live at. I think everybody in my department is proud of what they do, and we're probably, I'm not wanting anybody to thank us personally every day for what we do, but we're not appreciated a lot of time by the community. And we're looked at as maybe hassling the community. We're there to serve you as the citizens and to keep your community vibrant, to hold the value of your properties and make you proud to drive down your street every day. And no, we can't fix ugly. We can't make somebody paint a house, but we can keep the yards clean, and we can have the people mow the grass, and we can prevent them from storing washing machines and freezers out in the front yard and junk vehicles and being threatening to you. That's what this is all about. So you know more what we do and why we do it.
So basically, one very tangible thing as a homeowner would be you help preserve their values, so you don't lose value because all the homes around you are going down the drain, so to speak.
That's right.
There's another aspect to it too, and I think quality of life, code enforcement, and our legal system all work together in trying to accomplish this. There's a theory of maintaining neighborhoods that some call the broken window theory, where if you allow the degradation of homes, that can equal the degradation of neighborhoods, that can equal a whole area kind of not meeting its maximum potential and being a desirable place to live. And through the efforts of quality of life and through the efforts of code enforcement and a legal system, we're able to help the community maintain standards so that everybody can have a good place to live.
Well, that's a great point that you make, Mr. Johnson. There is a nexus. This is why we're discussing this topic in this setting at this night, because of the fact there is a public safety aspect to this whole conversation as well. Do you care to offer a little more about that, Sergeant Clark, and kind of explain more about your view as a police officer and how those two things connect with code enforcement and public safety?
Yes, sir. And as I could not have put it more eloquently, but what we see is if we have a neighborhood and you have a couple of dilapidated houses, then from our perspective, whether it's people who use drugs, whether it's gang members, whether it's just general ne'er-do-wells, they go in, they kind of take up residence, and they make life miserable for the people around them. And then when you have certain neighborhoods in certain parts of the county who are labeled as bad neighborhoods, well, no, they're not bad neighborhoods. You have good neighborhoods who are overly influenced by bad elements. And that's what happens when you have those kind of, when you have a situation that can be fixed through code enforcement. I won't toot our own horn, but they do a ton of work. And oftentimes, as Jerry was saying, they're not as appreciated. But when you look at the underlying issue, it's cleaning up the neighborhood one step at a time, one house at a time, one street at a time, and then eventually you won't have, eventually the people will find that, hey, you know what, the homeowners will come in or the property owners will come in, fix that property. The citizens will continue to contact code enforcement, contact us, offer these complaints that we go in and fix. And then the neighborhoods themselves become better because you're removing that element from the neighborhood. And the more complaints we get, the harder we're going to work. And the harder we work, the more the element that we don't want in those good neighborhoods where those good people live, who are essentially being held hostage by the one or two bad people. Once we get them out of there, then more good people come in and live. Then that person who lives in one part of town says, you know what, I'm going to move over there because I know I'll be safe, or I know that I'll go through the neighborhood and it looks great. So we remove those broken down cars. We remove. Get rid of those dilapidated houses. Not to mention the public health issue you have. Would say you have a bunch of tires, or you have, like Jerry was saying, refrigerators or freezers. You may have infestations of vermin. You don't want that. You don't want someone living next to that. But that's what we deal with. So we go in and we work hard to try to clean up those small pockets of blight to make sure that the entire neighborhood remains vibrant.
Now, if you have a situation where you have a tenant staying in a house, or you have a tenant in a business where there's some business owner who's located somewhere else, and there are found to be violations, to whom does the county look to make that good? The tenant or the owner of the property?
We actually do both. When we issue a notice of violation, it goes to the tenant, whether it be residential or commercial, as well as the property owner. It could be, I'll try to get the tenant to comply first. If the tenant does not comply, we can cite the tenant, and we can also cite the property owner as well. So, and frequently we do. If we have multiple violations from a tenant, repeat offender, we will go after the property owner to issue the citations to try to gain compliance.
What if the owner of the property is outside the Cobb County area? What happens then in terms of citations?
It depends on where they are. If they are within a radius that our process server would be able to reach them, then a private process server could be hired to serve the citations.
Okay. So if they're like one county over, they're not immune from your authority or jurisdiction?
Exactly.
It becomes difficult when they live in Nevada.
Right. It's hard to justify flying to Nevada to do a code
I don't
enforcement.
think the taxpayers
Yeah.
would pay for us to send someone over there to cite them in Nevada.
I mean, we've had them go to Blue Ridge. We've had them go to Hampton. I mean, we've had them go a pretty good distance to reach the property owners.
Okay, well, that's a pretty broad spread. Okay, okay. Now, what are the Cobb County restrictions that apply to group homes or group facilities in Cobb?
I'm assuming you're asking about a residential group home?
Yes.
Okay, residential group home, you can legally have 4 people reside in a residential group home. But for that to happen, you have to have that home sprinklered, protected from fire with a sprinkler system. Because of that cost, usually that prohibits people from wanting to go in with 4 people in a group home. So then it's only 3 that is allowed if it's not sprinklered. Although the law says you can have 4, usually we only have 3 people in that group home.
Okay. Can anything be done about boats and or cargo trailers that are parked in people's driveways?
It depends. If it's a personal boat and it's not a vehicle that weighs over 12,500 and it's not being used for business, these are issues that would have to be looked at. So yes, possibly,
Okay.
in answer to that.
Okay. Can a citizen escalate a code enforcement action on a specific property rather than just marking it down as a duplicate complaint?
I would like to comment on the duplicate and escalate. A lot of times we have good neighbors that are concerned. There are a group of neighbors and they'll enter 10 complaints on the same house. All that does, that creates confusion for us. We show up and we read them all. We can only work 1 complaint because we're computerized. We shut them down and close them as duplicates and keep 1 active. And a lot of times we'll keep 1 active and then the next day we'll get 3 or 4 more entered in. And constant complaining does not move that complaint along if you're going to complain by entering a complaint. The best way to do, if you enter a complaint, call us, check on it, find out where we're at, go online. You can look online and see the process where we're at in it if you want to, if you enter the complaint online. That's the best way to move it along. Keep in mind, when you file a complaint, we have 7 days to respond to it. But I'll tell you, our staff is, a lot of them 1 day, 2 days, we're turning them over fairly quick. And we do the initial investigation then. If we go out and do not find a violation, it's closed, so you could check on it and find out where we're at that point. But it's important you understand what we do. Again, if you remember me saying educating you on what we do. There's brochures available up here at front that tells you the common code violations generally found in residential neighborhoods. And if you'll take that brochure, you'll have a good understanding of what we can do. And it'll tell you in there that if it's an animal issue, such as a barking dog, don't call and leave me a message at 11 o'clock Saturday night because I'm not going to come out. We don't do that. Animal control is under public safety. Very important. You need to go to the right source, especially on a weekend. We were talking earlier about nuisance abatements. That is handled under the Community Development Agency, but not under the Code Enforcement Division. That falls under the Inspection Division. But if you email me and you think you have a nuisance, I'll direct it to the people who can advise you how to get the nuisance. We want to be able to help you every way we can, but you need to understand what we do and what we're allowed to do so you know who to call and who not to call in case you have an issue.
All right, thank you.
On the issue of the escalations, I also think it's important to note that we have to follow the due process that's outlined to make sure that when we bring something in front of a judge, that we did things the right way and gave that person the opportunity to correct it. So it's really important to understand that the code enforcement is as much of a process as it is our trying to get accommodation with the code. But if we bring something in front of a judge and we didn't go through our due process properly, they won't be able to uphold what we're bringing in front of them, and then we kind of get a little heck.
Right, so there's no shortcut.
Correct.
Okay. Have many people received jail time for code violations? And how about people who have long histories of being repeat offenders?
Well, I don't, excuse me, I think there hasn't been a whole lot of incarceration. We try not to do that for a couple of reasons. We understand they're code violations, and our county jail has limited resources, and there's other folks that probably need to be in jail more than people that violate the ordinances. But over the years, people have gone to jail, and from my perspective, it's usually a process where if there hasn't been compliance, there's a fine, there's a probationary period that can often attach. If you violate the probation or don't come into compliance within a probationary period, at the very end, when all other options really have been exhausted through the work of the officers in the field, through the trial of the case, through efforts through probation, then yeah, it's possible that they could serve time. But it's fairly rare, but it has happened.
Okay. Why are untagged autos that are being junked or dismantled allowed to pile up on properties when tags are required of all but those on salvage yards?
You want to take that, Gabby?
Sure. That is a definite code violation for properties to have untagged or inoperable vehicles. So if someone will just contact us with the property address and let us know, that's something that we can definitely address. Any vehicle that's not operable, doesn't have a current sticker attached to it, if it's dismantled, wrecked, if there are multiples, that can be in a residential or even sometimes in a commercial setting. On a commercial lot, vehicles that are there for the purpose of repair, there's a different scenario, but we do have occasions where, behind a building, there'll be a bunch of junk cars just stored. That's a different scenario.
Okay.
So, yeah, definitely a code violation for those non-compliant vehicles.
Okay. Now, this question is in regards to used car sales and salvage yards. Can counties and courts ignore state laws, and isn't the county required to enforce state licensing requirements?
I think you'd have to be a little more clear in what you're asking in state licensing, but if we issue a business license, and keep in mind, a business license is an occupational tax as far as the county's looking on this type of business. But if you're dealing in cars, that comes down to what you have to do through the state level. And Lennox is more probably familiar with this part of it than I am, but the state actually polices that. And we, as code enforcement, we're very weak on that. We can't do anything with that. We can deal if the cars aren't tagged. We can deal with the cars if they're junk on the property, what we call an NCV, which is a non-compliant vehicle. But that licensing is not an issue that we would engage in. But they shouldn't be there unless they have the approved licenses. And if they don't have one from Cobb County, they don't have one from the state.
Okay.
Most likely.
Okay.
Most likely.
All right, thank you. This questioner was concerned about the broadening or taking away of the code, limiting the number of vehicles and or unrelated individuals who are at a particular residence. What studies have been done to see how this affects the quality of life of neighbors and those around?
Well, I'll answer that in a different way. We've had a number of instances in the past year where families with 2 kids have been turned in by their neighbors for having more than the number of cars allowed in a particular zoning district. And our officers were following the code as they are instructed to do every day when they go out into the field. After the second or third time when this came before the Board of Commissioners, they directed staff to come up with a remedy to the situation. And what the direction that we received from the board is to bring forward a code amendment where families would be treated evenly across the zoning districts as it relates to the number of cars that would be allowed in a particular lot.
And do you know what the number of cars allowed now is at present?
The current code that is in front of the board for consideration would put the majority of the number of cars per lot at 4.
And is that one of the ones that's going to be considered at the meeting in February 2016?
That is accurate.
Okay, all right. Another question here, that from the, let's see, can the online system be cleaned to remove open cases from it and update the public so they can have a current and correct understanding of the status of a case?
Ask that again if you would, Joe.
Yes, can the online system be cleaned to remove open cases and keep the public current on the status of cases?
If you know the address or the code complaint number, it shouldn't prevent you from accessing that case. I don't think you'd want it cleaned. We don't want it cleaned because we use this when we first went on to the Acela program. What we use to monitor our complaints, we're building a history base, and that history base lets us look back and see what we've done in the past few years. And if we've been out there and issued them a notice for having the NCV, and we show back up 6 months later on a new case, we're not going to issue you another notice. You're going to get a citation if you got an NCV, because we've already told you can't have it there. You got rid of it for us to close the case. When did you bring it back? So we want that history there. But if you have the address, you can pull up everything and see it. And part of what I got said a while ago or earlier about the filing multiple complaints on a property, sometimes we get so many it confuses us and we have to jump around in them and read everything. Sometimes we'll open it up and say closed duplicate, open up another one, closed duplicate. So we need that information though. That is our history base, so I don't think you would want us to get rid of it. It would actually affect you as a user and the effort that we can do and the service we can provide.
Okay, thank you.
It helps our judges too when they're considering, I'm not speaking for our judges, but they certainly use that as part of their decision-making process.
Well, it'll come up during the course of a trial or if there's plea negotiations that go on. But in the course of the trial, the prosecutors and the officers will talk about what the history of the property is. And as you can probably tell from the discussion, a lot has happened before it actually gets to me. And so that history will be part of what comes out during the trial. So I can assume that they don't want that clean. They want that history to be available to them because it helps in the prosecution of their cases.
Okay. This person wanted to know about the student housing located near Kennesaw State being an issue, especially fraternity houses. What can be done in terms of code enforcement with that?
We had spoke about this earlier before the meeting started out in the audience. This is one of the most difficult issues for us to address from code enforcement. We've normally we run EMIs, which is an early morning inspection, and most of you probably wouldn't know that, but we would go by the home that's in question, count cars, see how many vehicles were there, because we've talked earlier about how many cars you could have outside. We've written down tag numbers and tried to identify what we've got going on at that property, because we've got a complaint that we may have 8 school kids living in the home, or 6, whatever. But it's a hard, difficult thing to do. We can go up to the door, ask them to fill out affidavits, state to us who's living in the home, and of course somebody could turn in one to us that's not correct. And they could also be truthful. We've had that happen before, and we've told people, certain folks have got to go out of the home. But as far as proving it, if they don't want to give us the affidavit and they don't have the vehicles there that substantiates it, it's a difficult case for us to prove. I think if I carried a case to court and said, well, I know they're there, but I can't prove they're there, and they won't fill out the affidavit, which I can't make them fill out the affidavit, but yet they're only telling me 2 people are living in the home, but I think there's more than that. I don't think I'd get very, very far in a court of law. I don't think I provided without a shadow of a doubt that they possibly could be guilty. And I don't want to pursue that, but in response to that, that is one of the most difficult things that we deal with, and we've been fortunate. We have been able to prove many of those cases and go to court and have it substantiated. But we also have quite a few that we don't. And we can't substantiate to move forward to carry it to court. And you got to understand, myself and my officers, we know better than to break the law. We're not going to go out and break the law and try to fab up something. We've got to be by the book on everything we do, so we can go into court and hold our hand up and affirm that we have done what we're supposed to do and what we're presenting as facts. Okay. And hopefully that answers the question.
Okay. All right. Another question this person is, how does Airbnb fit in terms of Cobb County Code, if there is a code that speaks to that?
I'll speak to that. The state is in the process of considering regulations on this. This is really a state issue to determine. Once the legislature makes a determination of how they would consider Airbnb, they will either do it through some kind of state level, or they'll allow local communities to regulate that particular business. But right now, it is not something that we're able to do because of the structure of it and it being in the state's hands right now.
Okay. Are the marketing signs you see at expressways permitted? And if not, what steps can be taken to remove them? I presume they mean things like realty signs, advertising different businesses and services and such.
Well, the marketing signs on freeways or state highways. That when I think of freeway, I'm thinking interstate.
Right. I presume that's what this question was asking. Now, if it's a county road, how does that change the answer?
County road or state road, if it's a sign in the right of way, we will deal with it. It's illegal to put any signage on a right of way, freedom of speech or advertising, either one. If you're going to be on the right of way with a sign, you better be having it in your hand, holding it, and not staking it in the ground, because that's illegal.
And just so people are clear, what is the right of way defined if it's a county road we're talking about?
The right of way is a Okay, all of y'all have water and power that run to your home and telephones and sewer lines in most occasions. All of that is placed in the right-of-way, which is a piece of property that's adjacent to the roads, where it may be buried, it may be overhead. That is common property that is county right-of-way. That is so we can provide the services and make sure they get delivered to you, and those services can be worked on without interference of delivering you electricity, gas, power, telephones, those kind of things. Those right-of-ways, and I've had people say, well, what is a right-of-way in Cobb County? It depends on what road you are. If you go from the center line of a road and you understand it has a 50-foot right-of-way, you go 25 feet to each side, and that is the county right-of-way. You may have driven down some of the larger roads and noticed a RW sign, a little concrete marker on the side of the road. That's where the right-of-way property line is. We have 50 foot, 60 foot, 75 feet, 100 feet, 120 feet. It depends where you're at. So those right-of-ways change constantly. A lot of people plant on the right-of-way. They plant trees on the right-of-way, and the DOT may come by and put a notice on your door and say, we're going to cut the tree down if you don't, because it's endangering the right-of-way. The county or the state, depending on what right-of-way it is, has a right to protect the right-of-way for the common good of the citizens.
Okay.
And if you want to know what the right-of-way is, you can go to the GIS on the Cobb County website, which is the mapping, active mapping center. You can go on that, open it up, pull up the particular roads you want to find, and you'll see little yellow lines outside of the actual asphalt or concrete, whatever the road is. And you can actually, also a measuring tool on there, you can measure it and get the width of that right-of-way, and it's pretty well dead accurate as far as the number,
Okay.
if that helps.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm sure a lot of people thought right-of-ways have a fixed amount of feet everywhere in Cobb County, but
Yes.
it varies on the size of road. Okay. Now, what about people who live in communities that have HOAs and covenants? What is the interplay between the work that the HOA might be responsible for taking care of in the neighborhood versus what the county might be in charge of? Like if you have a dog or a disorderly neighbor, or things like where do those two things break or separate from each other?
I'd like to open this up that an HOA covenant is not a county ordinance, and a county ordinance is not a HOA covenant. We would only get involved in that aspect when it is a violation of the county ordinance. You may have a covenant that mirrors the ordinance, but we're going to use our ordinance if we get called upon to deal with it. We have been asked by HOAs to enforce their covenants. That's not what we do. We have no authority to do that. We have no authority to cite the court for that, so we won't engage in it unless it's a violation of our county ordinance.
Right. The HOAs have to enforce their own covenants and their own bylaws, and they can wind up in magistrate court, but it's typically through a civil lawsuit as opposed to a criminal action. Violation of an HOA is not necessarily a criminal action. It'd have to be a violation of the county ordinance or a state law. So while you can wind up in court on an HOA violation, it's usually a civil matter,
Right.
Unless it happens to mirror what the county code is, and then code enforcement will be in, but they would not be enforcing an HOA covenant. They'd be enforcing the county code.
Right. So, I mean, for example, like if you have a neighbor who's having a loud party at 2 a.m, the solution to that is not call your HOA president and say, get down here and solve this problem. The answer is call law enforcement.
Correct. And sometimes there was a question about boats, I think earlier in driveways or trailers or things of that nature. While it may not be a violation necessarily of the county code, it may violate the HOA covenant. And the remedy for the HOA would then be to sue the homeowner to get them to comply with, get a court order. Sometimes they can levy fines if they haven't paid HOA fees, to actually file a civil lawsuit to remedy that. But it wouldn't be any sort of criminal action or ordinance action on the part of the county.
And just in terms of the process that you have, when you have a case brought before you, whether it's a home or it's a business, what information are you looking for to see in the file that's in front of you? And do you take testimony from people like either Mr. Lanham or Sergeant Clark in conjunction with a particular case?
Right. The way it works, assuming that it's a code violation and a criminal sort of violation, our code ordinance court X, it's structured similar to if you'd go to traffic court. So they would do all their field work and do all the things they've talked about. It got to the citation point. You'd be issued a citation, and on that there'd be a court date. Well, you'd show up to that very first court date, which is kind of our arraignment day, and they can be fairly crowded. Some of these tickets, you can prepay them, like you can traffic tickets. You can get online and prepay them and close the case out. There are some tickets that are must-appears, where you have to show up because we're looking for compliance. Things like rabies violations, we want to make sure that the animal's been vaccinated, that sort of stuff. And on that first arraignment date, you'll have the opportunity to speak with a prosecutor to see if you can work something out and enter a plea that resolves the case. Or you can enter a plea of not guilty and get the case set up for a trial in front of a judge or a jury trial in another court. So the initial court date is structured much like traffic court. And then out of that, we resolve cases. Those cases that don't get resolved get moved to a trial. We'll have a trial. If the person's not guilty, of course, there's no penalty. If they are guilty, then I fashion a remedy, and then they get placed on a compliance calendar to make sure we have compliance thereafter.
And are you basically ruling based on hearing not only paper evidence, but you're also hearing live testimony from individuals like, again, Mr. Lanham or maybe Sergeant Clark or the person who's been cited? You're looking to hear testimony from those people under oath.
Correct. We'll take testimony from everybody. The county gets to go first. They're the prosecutors, so it's set up just like any other court. The code enforcement officer will testify. The defendant, we'll call them, the citizen that got the ticket, will have the opportunity to cross-examine or ask questions. Oftentimes there's multiple witnesses, multiple code officers or police officers that come in, and it's the same process. There's testimony that's given, there's questions that can be asked, and then the person who received the ticket has the opportunity to testify. They also have the right to remain silent. And a number of people, hire lawyers to come in with the process too. So it is run like a typical court case with question and answer, direct examination, cross-examination, taking of evidence, verbal evidence, pictures, documents, drawings, videos, audio recordings. It's a full trial.
Okay. And then do you typically issue rulings from the bench then and there, or do you typically take matters under advisement and issue a ruling at a later time?
On the ordinance cases, I'll make a decision then. I may take a break to look something up or do a little research, but it's then and there essentially. I may take a 5-minute break if I need to confirm a law or something, but it's not something that I would take under advisement for a week or two. You get a decision right then for the most part.
Okay. And then what happens to a defendant who receives a must-appear notice and decides just to blow it off and go on vacation instead? What happens to him or her?
Yeah, that happens a lot, and this is one area where we find people get incarcerated, because if you don't show up to court, then the case isn't you just fail to appear in court. We'll issue a warrant for your arrest, and so what will happen is the warrant will be issued. They'll go get picked up at some point. Oftentimes, the officers will go to the house, or many times somebody will be stopped for a traffic ticket, and there's an outstanding warrant for them, or they go to things of that nature. So they'll get arrested. They'll have a bond they'll have to post to get out of jail, and then once they get booked into the county jail, they can post a bond. If they do, they're given a new court date to come back. If they can't post a bond, we bring them up to the very next court date that we have. So we don't make them sit for months on an ordinance violation. But yeah, we have a great number of fail to appears. People, unfortunately, don't take the process as serious as they should, and then they find themselves in jail.
Now, does Sergeant Clark's department, are they tasked with actually going out and making those arrests, or can it be any Cobb County officer or any sheriff?
It can be any Cobb County officer can arrest. The sheriff's department will typically go out and search for folks, but the county officers come in contact with hundreds and hundreds of people a day, and I'll let him speak to that. But oftentimes people get picked up because they're driving by a house, or they're stopped for a traffic ticket, or something else comes up.
Yeah, just to mirror what he said, one of the sheriff's primary functions is to go out and look for warrants, or people who have warrants, and then bring them so they can stand trial or make their appearances in court. But we do come across, because we have so many interactions with the public, we'll catch them on whether it's a consensual encounter, or if we're called to a location for a completely separate call, they may have a warrant outstanding.
All right. What role, if any, does the fact that a person coming before the court has been before the court many previous times, whether for the same matter or for some other matter, what weight does that carry in terms of the evaluation of their case?
Well, that's a hard question to answer. I mean, you try to look at each case individually, but clearly the prosecution is going to bring up the fact that they have had multiple violations. Just like if you'd gone to a traffic court and you had multiple speeding violations, those things are going to come up because there is we try to work with a fine schedule, so everybody in the same situation is treated the same way. But if you're a repeat violator, you're going to be treated like other repeat violators. So that information does come up. But that's typically in the penalty phase. Usually, when the original guilt or innocence phase stands on the citation that they currently have, and then if they are found not guilty of that ticket, then there is no penalty. If they are guilty, then the penalty may be increased because they're repeat violators.
Okay. But there is a fine schedule.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we try to go by it. It's not really mandatory, but we try to use it because it just helps. It helps us be consistent in the way we handle these cases. Then there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds that come through. So it's a way for us to be consistent and treat everybody that's in the same situation the same way. So it's just not me making up stuff along the way.
Okay.
Try not to.
Not because you had a bad day or.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Okay. What can you tell the public? What is this? What is the volume of code enforcement cases that typically you see in your department or see in your court? What number, so people have some idea of what you're working with?
I don't have the grand total for the year. It's around 6,000, I think, per year. But just to give you a daily thing, each Thursday morning, we will have scheduled around 100 cases, maybe 80 to 125 cases that are scheduled. Of that, we'll have a good number of those have paid, but still there's probably 50, 60, 70 people that have not, that are supposed to be there. And then of those, we'll have 15, 20, 25 that fail to appear each court date. So when you come to a Thursday court session, probably when you look at the board out front, there's going to be about 100 cases, give or take, scheduled every Thursday at 9 a.m. At 1 o'clock, we have a compliance hearing, and it just depends how many people are on probation that need a compliance hearing. That could be 2, that could be 25. It just depends. In trials, because they take longer, we try to limit the trials and the abatement actions, 5, 6, 7 trials Thursday afternoon, simply because they take the longest. They're the most time-consuming. So if you, we break it down into 3 calendars for a Thursday.
Okay. And how about the number of cases that you have to start with? How many cases do you have, regardless of whether they comply or not with what you're trying to do?
As far as what's in court, or as far as just a yearly number?
Yearly number, right.
We conduct about 22 to 23,000 inspections a year. Each property that we inspect gets inspected at least twice. Once at the initial phase, and then again to ensure compliance. And sometimes it takes multiple visits to gain compliance. But yeah, I think it's about around 23,000.
And how many people again are in your department?
9 code officers in our
9
division.
code officers and 23,000 violations.
Right, and we do operate, as Jerry said, very efficiently. We, have a very good computer program that manages our inspections for us. The officers route every day. They go out, they hit the road about 9 o'clock and don't come back in until 3 or 3:30. Some of them don't come back in until 4 o'clock, just to make sure that they get their inspections completed. So we have a really hard-working group of people.
So they're very busy.
Very busy, and like it that way. Makes the day go by.
And just to highlight the work they do, that's about 22,000 plus inspections they do. All those inspections and the work they do in the field don't automatically result in citations. Maybe about 20 to 25% get to the citation stage after they've done all their field work. So still a lot of tickets,
Right.
But not near as many as the inspections they have to do. So they get probably, I would, if we had to put a number on it, 75% compliance just through their field work and daily work, doing their inspections and working with the citizens.
Okay.
And I want to add one thing if I can.
Sure.
We talked about signs on the freeway or on the roadways and in the right-of-way. Over the last 4 years, approximately, we pulled 20,000 signs off the county right-of-way each year. That's the average now, because we've had 22,000 one year, 18,000 another year, but an average of 20,000 illegal signs posted on the county roads that we've removed. And we've issued citations for some of those, and Kathy's been fortunate enough to personally catch somebody hanging them on telephone poles with a hammer. So you need to understand the impact of what we do. There's a lot of things that go unseen, and I'm thinking if we hadn't pulled 80,000 signs off the roads, what would the roads look like today? So I wanted to add that in, well, what else we do in inspections and court cases.
Okay. Now, I think we're about to come to the end of our program, so what I'd like to do, if I could, from each of you on the panel, is just sort of leave the audience with a very brief comment about something that perhaps they may not have known about code enforcement, especially as we look at it in the public safety arena, and a positive, to keep on Mr. Lanham's point, to have this is a positive experience. Code enforcement, again, is about enhancing the county and the quality of the life that we lead here, as opposed to being some sort of punitive type thing. So if I could, I'll just pick on the good judge here, and we'll work our way across the panel and just say, again, a few words to each of you as we close.
First thing I'd like to say is that you can't talk to the judge ahead of time. You're not permitted to do that, and I'd ask that when you come to court, be prepared. It is court. It is technically a criminal action. It's not something to be taken lightly, and have your evidence in order, have your arguments in order. It's time to present a case. It's not time to be nasty to people or prosecutors or court staff. So it's a real court case and treated as such when you come to court.
Thank you so much.
The thing that I would like to add is just that we are officers, but we are reasonable persons, and if you do find yourself on the side of a code enforcement violation, just call. Don't ignore it. Just give us a phone call. We'll be glad to try to work it out with you, give you reasonable time for compliance. If you need a little extra time, just don't ignore it, because you don't want to end up in court. That's the other thing that I would like to add.
Thank you. Mr. Lanham?
Yeah, I'd like to add, we're here to help you as citizens of Cobb County. So many citizens, they want to save their neighborhood, but they want to do it in a quiet way, and unfortunately you can't do that. Become involved. You've got a better understanding of what code enforcement can do and what we do. And if you want your neighborhood to go down or you want it to maintain and start going up, you're going to need our assistance. You're probably going to need quality of life assistance. But these are your neighborhoods, and Cobb County is a great place to live and work in. We want to maintain that and keep it going for you. And we're here to serve you as the citizens.
Thank you. Mr. Johnston?
Yeah, I'll kind of echo what Jerry said, and code enforcement really is a team effort. It's our public safety officials, it's our code enforcement officers in the field, it's the prosecutors and judges who make decisions based upon the evidence presented in front of them, and it's the community and the neighbors who care about the place where they live, and they want to live in a quality, healthy community, and all of us working together, we can help accomplish that goal.
All right. Thank you so much. Sergeant Clark?
Thank you. I think it's important to kind of remember that when it comes to us, those of us who are kind of handing out these citations, that we personally believe it is far better that your money is spent on you, or at least fixing the problem, than it is paying the court. And if we can try to avoid, as Kathy said, punitive action, we'll do that. We will work with you 100%. We will, whatever time you need, we understand whether it's money's tight or you've got some things going on in your life, we can handle it. We can deal with that. All we like is communication. Call us, let us know. I understand your concern. I understand the violations. I'm going to get to work on it. Here's my plan for it. And then we can work with that. But like I said, to reiterate, it's far better that you spend your money on yourself or fixing up the property or whatever the situation is than it is paying it for a citation. And we do operate under that creed.
All right. Wonderful. Well, I want to thank each and every one of you. I think we're very blessed in Cobb County to have such fine, distinguished public servants. And I want to thank our members of our audience who've come here tonight, braved the cold, damp, wintry weather out there to come in here and be concerned about your community, to want to hear about code enforcement and support the code enforcement's efforts. Appreciate that. And also, of course, thank you to our audience that we have online as well as on TV. And again, this particular panel, we thank you for your service, and we'll have another conversation next month on another topic with another group of experts, all as part of our effort to help educate the citizens of Cobb County. And so thank you so very much for all that you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for those in the audience for attending this evening. We truly appreciate you coming out this evening, and thank you for those who are watching on Cobb TV this evening. We especially want to thank our dynamic panel members and our moderator. We are honored to have each of you as our moderator and panel members this evening. Our community is very fortunate to have each of you educating the community concerning code enforcement. We commend you for your daily dedication to ensure that each resident of Cobb County has the ability to file a code violation and to know it will be taken seriously. We also appreciate and thank each of you for your service in providing us daily with a safe county that cares and provides the best quality of life for all residents. A special thank you to Cornelius for broadcasting this discussion on Cobb TV. Thank you for joining us this evening. We invite you to watch all of our 2013, 2014, 2015, and 2016 panel discussions on Cobb TV or linked from the Neighborhood Safety Commission website. Please join us Wednesday, February the 17th at 7 p.m. when our topic will be accountability courts in Cobb County. Thank you again and good night.